Hello.
Have you ever been curious about Ronald Reagan's economic policy and its effect on the United States of America? No? Well, too bad. Ronald Reagan has come to be one of the most controversial and divisive public figures in American history. After one of the most economically unstable administrations, the Carter administration, the American people desired change. Ronald Reagan, a prolific movie star, politician, and outspoken critic of liberal economic policies, seemed to be the perfect candidate. He was charismatic, level-headed, funny, and, most of all, not Jimmy Carter. Reagan's ideology about economics was fairly different than Carter's, because he preferred the laissez-faire approach to government involvement in the economy, which, for those who don't know, is kind of like letting the economy loose and to figure stuff out on its own and, poking it with a stick every once in a while to see if it's still alive.
Now, this approach has many upsides, like greater efficiency, more of a chance for innovation, and more incentive for entrepreneurship given the lack of government regulation. However, there are also many downsides, like increased income inequality, exploitations of workers and consumers, concentration of wealth, underprovision of public services, monopolies, the little things like that. Anyway, this ideology would greatly affect the legacy of the Reagan administration and is the source of much of the controversy surrounding his name today.
Now we have to go off topic for a second because we have to discuss neoconservatism. Neoconservatism originated in the 1960s in opposition to the counterculture movements of the time, as well as the growing pacifist ideology among the Democratic Party. It became popular among Republicans in the United States and, unsurprisingly, the Conservative Party in the UK. The Tories. One of the main economic beliefs of neoconservatives was the idea of equality of opportunity, not necessarily equality of outcome. This led to the common belief in laissez-faire and supply-side economics. Oh yeah, they hated communism too. Really hated it. But what did this have to do with our boy Ronald Reagan?
When Ronald Reagan took office, he had four main goals in mind for the economy. Number 1, he wanted to reduce the growth of government spending. Number 2, he wanted to reduce marginal tax rates on income from both labor and capital. Number 3, he wanted to reduce regulation. See, that's the laissez-faire stuff. 4, he wanted to reduce inflation by controlling the growth of the money supply. To achieve these, he instituted tax cuts, decreased social spending, and deregulated the market. And because obviously, if you want the economy to do better, you should relocate funds to the military spending budget. Now, this economic strategy is called supply-side economics, but it was known to many critics as trickle-down theory. In Reagan's mind, the economy ran based on the success of business owners in the upper class, and he felt that if the wealthy were given tax breaks, the wealth would trickle down to everyone to help the economy as a whole. In theory, if large corporations and businesses were provided with more resources, it should provide more opportunity for the people in lower and middle class. However, in practice, it didn't exactly do that, and actually increased income inequality by a lot.
Now, for context, when Reagan was sworn into office in 1981, the biggest problem was not necessarily income inequality. It was inflation. The U.S. inflation rate was around 10%, which, for perspective, in 2024 it was only 2.9%. In theory, cutting personal income tax should give the people more disposable income, therefore balancing supply and demand, which should lead to a general decrease in prices. However, the biggest issue with Reagan's tax cuts was the increase in the federal budget deficit, or national debt, due to lack of government revenue. In 1981, the national debt was only around $997 billion. By the end of Ronald Reagan's second term, it was $2.1 trillion. This is probably the biggest issue most people had with Reagan's economic policy. Overall, Reaganomics had its pros and cons. It increased employment, created more job opportunities, reduced inflation dramatically, and caused a significant amount of economic growth. However, it also doubled the national debt, increased income inequality, and returned the U.S. back into a military state. One interesting thing about Reagan is either people worship him or despise him. Regardless of whether or not you approve of his economic policies, you cannot deny he was a very influential figure in recent American history with a very unique approach to economics. Anyway, Thank you for watching. Don't forget to turn the oven off before you leave your house, and we will see you guys later.